lawyers involved, because the state is going to receive massive amounts of revenue sharing benefits and all kinds of welfare perks. In other words, as they draw the Indian people into their welfare system further, they're going to have a body count that goes up, basically. And they get to get money for that. They're going to get federal matching funds under the guise of protected group status, Indian American, gender, equality, and affirmative action, and all of these gimmicks. These are legislated gimmicks. They're part of the legal plunder system. And so to think that the state is not a stakeholder beneficiary would be a mistake, because they certainly are not going to talk to the people about this, except in terms of, well, we're going to be efficient. And you know how the BIA was so bad. They were so evil. And that drum has burned itself out. The evil BIA has gone away, and the Indian reservation people wanted it to go away. But they're going to get a new master, and that new master is the state welfare system, who was part and parcel to the destruction of the sovereign people in themselves. There are three aspects of this that need to be addressed when the bar lawyers are out of that tribal court. And a competent practitioner that can comprehend indigenous and comprehend decency can go before that tribunal and decide these matters. And it's not going to be competently decided by foreign laws, and it's not going to ever be settled by foreign policy. Those are just mitigation of the damage. And that's why we're all over the world wiping out indigenous dominions in the interest of saving them. In other words, it's an old concept, burn the village to save it. It was a Vietnam issue for sure. I want to make sure that we go back in, and I want to hear this from Art's point of view, but when you look at majoritarian hearsay, that has a lot to do with consensus reality. The Supreme Court gets together, they're religiously, spiritually, psychologically, politically tainted. They could not make an objective decision if they tried. They're certainly not competent to deal with making up who the sovereign indigenous people are. They're not entitled to do that. The injection of common law is important to comprehend. How did common law get into the tribes? Was it common law of the tribe? No, it wasn't. The bar court and lawyers carefully injected common law into the tribes, and they did it by consensus and collaboration and negotiation among themselves, all being part of the same corporate structure. If you would ask a oath of allegiance by a bar lawyer to the sovereign, to the Lakota, they will not do it. If you ask them to promise professionality to the corporate bar, they will certainly do it. Before I go back with Art on this, I want to say one more thing. The law is nothing but policy these days, and it's called law arbitrary. The prerogatives of the judges and the lawyers and their political persons just get together and do whatever they want. But one of the worst atrocities in Indian country that we see is plea bargaining. Bar lawyers plea bargaining away, say they have an absolutely unimpeachable, will not be found guilty by a jury person, but there was technical mitigating circumstances. So there's an appearance of guilt. There's a plausible guilt. there's a potentiality prosecution. Well, we'll find them guilty until proven innocent. Now, that's about feudal law and the royal court system. So these mitigations, these things that are going on in the courtroom are just not about crimes, but the courts are dealing with sustained failed mitigation. And that means that to do so, they have to stabilize the profits. This is going to be a very, very large matter of litigation in the days to come, is now, and it will get more developed in Indian country as the reinventing native nations hysteria continues. And that is ecosystem derivatives speculation. The conversion of the natural assets under primacy of environment. In other words, the indigenous people see some things that cannot be owned. They cannot be turned into corporate collateral. That's a major issue, and the climate change scenario, exchanges, offsets, cap and trade, conservation easements, land trusts, setbacks, carbon footprint taxation, carbon credits, carbon banking, swaps, stewardship contracting. I'm talking about IRS exemptions, exclusions, and protective status to various Class B and so-called non-profit institutions. Now there's a motive, money. And what is happening in all of these corporate moves, you're having bar lawyers migrate out of the judiciary, and they develop protective means and so forth at law schools. They're in and outside House counsel. So what they're doing is they're creating a new form of corporate agency relationship, and it's called collaborative governance. But really, the philosophy driving it goes into an economic order that's known all over the planet. And I assure you, we can say truthfully that that's a corporatism at the international scale, also known in history as fascism. So what we're seeing come into Indian country was first democracy. And that was used as an instrument against the hereditary diplomatic class people. Well, the majority wants to do this. The majority wants to do that. Well, as you know and I know, it's easy in this country, in this moment, to mislead people into genocidal acts because the polls say the majority support that policy. Art, would you pick this up from here?
I sort of like Benjamin Franklin's definition of democracy: two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
Go ahead, please, Art.
Okay. When I really look back at a lot of the experiences that we've had with this legal system that has come into the First Nations concerns, is we here at Washoe created a business called the Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California. And they do business under a corporate charter with the federal government. And a lot of times they go into business and they don't have people that are educated by the culture and traditions of the people. They are representatives of a tribal business or corporation. And so whenever the agencies outside of the tribe or the Washoe culture and traditions, when it comes to management, the agencies of the states we're in, Nevada and California, would request for Washoe input. And so the Washoe tribe would send out their representative. And the agencies would always be confused because these people that would come from the tribe, they worked for the tribe, but they didn't know culture and traditions and the history of the Washoe people. They just worked for the corporation. And so they were left without the information that they were supposed to be providing. So in turn, a lot of times they would try to, the corporation, tribal corporation, wasn't working on behalf of the Washoe people or our value systems with morals and the principles that go along with the land, air, animal, water, and the creator and the families that were involved. And the corporation, sometimes when they didn't work together, the people didn't give this information out freely because it was always exploited or always used to benefit funds or resources, but those resources and funds never reached the people. But they always provided jobs for those in the corporate business. And so what we've had to deal with over the years is this corporate business that we the people own a lot of times work directly against us and even use it against us. If we don't give them something, then we don't get nothing from our own business. I've been arrested 3 times by the Washoe Tribal Police for tractor theft, which I have not been convicted for any of their charges. Remind you that the tractor in question is owned by the corporate business of the Washoe people, which is me. And that tractor belongs to me as a member. What was and is known is that the tribal or the traditional information of Washoe culture I was raised to know. The Washoe corporate business committees continue to want me to give them information that pertains to management and use practices of the Washoe people. And the corporate leaders don't know and don't understand what this is. And they use their positions to try to get this information from me under pressure. Even I was told by individual leaders of the tribal business, Art, if you don't start giving the tribe this information that belongs to all of us, you'll never get nothing from this tribe. And since those days, my name has been expatriated by the leadership to agencies and gossip venues, keep me from doing business anywhere with local or state departments. I was even sent a letter through the mail by the business department of the Washoe tribe that I can't be a spiritual personality. Also, even when I arrested for the use of the tractor by the tribal police, I asked why I was being arrested. The cop said, "Man, we really appreciate you helping and doing what you can, but we were told and said the chairman of the Washoe tribe, Brian Wallace, gave directive to law enforcement that I was to be arrested, and again, I wasn't convicted of a crime." And after I was let out of jail the 3rd time, the judge, the police came and got me in jail at the Douglas County Jail. He brought me to the courtroom, and I spoke, and there was just the judge, the prosecutor, and a defense attorney in there. They said to me, "Art, you need to go to the tribal council and find out who that tractor belongs to." And I told them I know who it belongs to, me. And then they said, "It doesn't matter." They said, "You got to go to the tribal council and find out who that belongs to." And then they let me go. And the defense attorney on my way out, he said, "Oh, hey, hold on. By the way, stop by the probation office and file with them for probation," which I didn't. But it was funny how they acted as though I was supposed to be subservient to whatever they said, and no matter what they were telling me to do, none of it was legal. I just got out of jail for a crime that I wasn't even charged with. But yet this system that we're under, I think William called it the royal court, or the royal system, is the tribal leadership or the corporate side of the Washoe people is using a mechanism to making the system that we're living under, that the tribal chairman has the right to make all these decisions and do things that are totally against the law, but he's protected by some kind of sovereignty, which he doesn't possess. I possess it because I am a real human being. Could you say something on that, William?
As obviously we'll just reiterate, the royal court system in our situation, obviously you have the legislative branch is almost silent there, or silence chilled, and you have the chief executive who's commingling himself with the judiciary branch into the enforcement contracting. Washoe tribes are certainly subject to public laws that clearly show waiver of immunity, which means there's going to be due process. And in his situation, it was simply a persecution to disenfranchise him. What we've done is we've drafted a declaration of vindication. One of the more outstanding declarations has been signed by people and sent to the Peltier family and those representatives, and they're not moving on it as quickly as they should, because that vindicates him for 30-some years in jail. And he was put there as an example to tell other people to stay in line, stay obedient. The same thing applies in a pathetic level, again, in our case, where the commingling goes on, and there's actually a few bar attorneys that try to actually excuse that as that's the way we do things, that's culture, that's tradition, that's custom, and that's a lie, that's perjury, because nothing in the Washoe ways in the case file ever indicated that you could wrongfully accuse somebody, run a gossip mill on them to disenfranchise them. What we see in the judiciary departments, the judicial so-called unified systems throughout Indian country, is a constant weaponized system where, especially in child protective services, the allegations are made, in comes the CPS officials, and they checklist a report saying that the child was molested. And since the state and the tribe and the authorities don't want to get sued or charged, they simply rubber stamp it, take the child out, and the family is put in a position of proving innocence, and there's no proof of guilt needed. And that's part of the commingling of the collaborative governance movement and the alternative dispute resolution. In other words, in comes the experts in expert judgment elicitation, and they interview an incompetent person of unsound mind, the child, and then they hold that to a higher esteem, and the expert puts a stamp on it saying the little person said this and there was evidence of abuse. In 80% of the cases, I'd estimate roughly, it was such an adulteration and misuse and wrongful conduct on the part of court officers that they all need to be charged and put in jail themselves. And in fact, if they were to follow biblical moray, if you have two false witnesses come forward in a CPS thing and they are proven to be false witness, they should definitely do the time that and the penalty that they sought on the defendant parents. And this is going on to the point of cash for kids. In other words, kids are an asset. In Indian country, it is a constant gossip about whose kids are this, that, and the other thing, while the real cause of that being the austerity programming, the conversion, fraudulent conversion of assets, the taking of property. It's amazing to me with the court cases that are out there all the way to the Supreme Court, how many families are left destitute because there was a collusive presumption that the revenue sharing, taxation sharing agreements were actually valid. And all that is that the tribal stakeholder agencies, including the lawyers, corporate lawyers, and the county lawyers, actually plan the participation in the courtroom so neither one is indicted, such as in the Aerotop case where they called her in Montana, Blackfeet, a bad person. So they really had no live controversy between them. They were both stakeholders in revenue sharing beneficiary agreements, while she was challenging it, and she had a live controversy and a decent case. But the fact of the matter is that the tribal attorney and the bar judges, bar lawyers, all had a loyalty, and they did not want to disturb those revenue sharing tax agreements, which meant if you didn't pay your taxes, your Indian property was taken from you. And there's over 2,500 takings in the Blackfeet Dominion. And it's interesting to me that the county, Glacier County, would be so arrogant when there's a question of whether it was even lawfully made a county, going all the way back into the history of the enabling ordinances and so forth. So we'll really see, and it's an attachment to the identity theft, is this fraudulent conversion. And how do you do it? Well, first thing you do it exactly as Art and Benny have both explained. You have a judge, a bar court judge, and a bar lawyer, and they do as they're told. And in the Quileute example on the north coast of Washington, the witness, an attorney, said when he challenged a tribal corporate attorney, a fisheries attorney, she merely said to him, when they tell us to do wrong, we do wrong. That is demonstrating a violation of bar code canons, courtroom trustworthiness, and so forth. So that trust in that Quileute tribal court and their attorney system is certainly, in terms of fisheries, is now questionable trustworthiness. If the judges and the attorneys do not take some very important remedial steps to gain trust, all they're doing is handing off more and more of the jurisdiction to the respective states, which are no more confident than the federal government to guarantee any sort of justice and judgment, due process, or anything. And the reason I say that is that the bar courts and bar attorneys rely on more than ever plausibility guilt, such as the war on terror. They're plausible targets, so they shoot them all. They napalm them all. They attack drone them all. It's called collective punishment. And that's not only potentiality prosecution of the suspected insurgent, it's also persecution, and that will go straight into history books as an intentional genocide, atrocity, Holocaust, and every form of cruelty that ensues.
William,
I
found something yesterday. I wanted to play it yesterday. I want to play it today. Now, it's a graphic, it's a video, but the video, you just have to use your imagination, or go to my Facebook page, Free American 69, and all it is a bunch of dots. It's a bunch of colored dots, and an arrow or two, and the dots represent us. 300 million Americans, us. And I want to play it. You have to use your imagination a little bit, but it asks a question, and I thought you might be qualified to answer that question. It's put on by Larkin Rose, who is the one that did the video asking, thank our troops for what yesterday?
Need to zoom in some more to see them. I know they're there somewhere. Zoom in. There they are. And this gang of a few hundred said to the throng of 100 million, from now on, you all have to give us a cut of everything you earn.
Now what he's saying here is a little tiny black dot here. And this dot is right beside a bunch of large colored dots that represent the 300 million Americans. And this one tiny dot here represents our government.
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the number of U.S. congressmen.
And the throng said, gosh, do we have to give you a cut of what we earn? And the gang of a few hundred said, yes, you have to. And the throng said, well, okay, I guess we have to. And one little troublemaker asked, what if we don't? The gang of a few hundred didn't like this and said, if you do not comply, we shall unleash upon you our legions of enforcers. And the throng cried, oh no, please don't. We will comply, we will pay.
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the total number of IRS employees.
Time went by, and the gang of a few hundred said, now we want more of what you earn. And this kept happening over and over again, until eventually some of the throng were paying almost half of what they earned to the gang. Whenever the gang demanded more, the throng would say, golly, we're already having a tough time. Do we really need to give you even more? And the gang always said, yes, you must, or we shall unleash our legion of enforcers. Now the gang of a few hundred was getting trillions of dollars every year, spending it on wars and pyramid schemes, giving away goodies to their friends, buying influence, and doing lots of other things. And some of the throng started saying, we don't really like the war you're waging with the money we give you. Do we really have to be paying for that? And the gang said, yes, we demand it. Don't make us send out our legion of enforcers. And some of the throng said, you're taking our money and giving it to huge corporations and giant banks. And some people who just don't want to work. A lot of these things we don't like. And the gang said, we don't care. We will decide how to spend it. You just do as you're told, or else. And the throng said, okay, I guess we have to. But eventually the throng got so fed up, so angry, that they took a drastic step. One day they said to the gang, we don't like what you're doing. We want a new gang. And after pouring a huge amount of time and money into the effort, they replaced the gang with a new gang. Then the throng pleaded with the new gang, now, at long last, can we keep our own money, or at least keep more of it? And the new gang said, sorry, but after much discussion, we've decided that you can't. You have to keep giving us what you've been giving, in fact, a little bit more than before. The throng was distraught and said, this is dreadful. But after all, what choice do we have? I mean, they say we must comply, and they have that scary legion of enforcers. We're powerless against them. We'd better just do as we're told. So they did as they were told, got poorer and poorer, and lived miserably ever after. But after all, what else could they have done? What power could this throng possibly have compared to this gang of a few hundred and their enforcers? What chance would this thing have against this thing? How could these 100 million people ever hope to successfully resist the awesome power of this tiny little dot? In case anyone missed this, let's review. Here's them. Here are their enforcers. Here's us. Them, us. Them, us. Does anything about this seem just a little strange to you? Are you perhaps wondering, why does the throng need the permission of the dot to do anything? Why do these people feel the need to ask this tiny little dot if they can keep more of what they earn? Why would they spend year after year literally begging for lower taxes from this little dot? Is this dot just really darn intimidating? Is it very persuasive in its reasoning? To be blunt, why would this throng give a rodent's backside what this tiny little dot wanted? The fact that this tiny dot has the gall to issue such demands to such a throng is pretty startling in and of itself. But what is far more amazing is that the throng obeys this minuscule little parasitic gang of control freaks. What could possibly explain this? Let's ask the dot. This is how it works. When we, the dot, take your money and spend it on things you don't like, we're representing you. In fact, though you're not allowed to actually keep your own money, you're allowed to decide which little dot will steal half of what you earn. So that really means that you're in charge and that you're agreeing to give us your money. In fact, we, the dot, are serving you when we take your money and spend it on things you don't like. And so you should thank us and treat us with great respect and honor for having robbed you on your behalf for your own good in order to serve you by doing things you don't want us to do.
And if you missed it, there are two little dots. There's the Republican dot and there's a Democratic dot. And they were almost too small to see there.
Obviously, you know, we're going to back up a little bit and look at this, and then I want Art to pick this up and Benny again. The first order, the first instance is that the idea that we're going to have groupthink, we're going to have this majoritarian hearsay. What those have been used for is to confuse the rights and titles, such as there's a presumption that you are just a debtor. Actually, you're a tax remitter. And where do these things go from here? You know, what's going to happen? You have a situation, the contention is building, obviously, the sectarian tensions are building, everything's building on schedule. And this is going to a new kind of government called collaborative governance, and that is basically that the little dots are not entitled to initiatives and referendums anymore. And that is codified and that's formal, and it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with the prosecuted serial conflicts such as the war on terror, or whether you're dealing with a domestic decision-making groupie process in a local lex fori community. The way it's going to resolve is that, first of all, you have a right to resistance against wrongdoing and tyranny, and it doesn't matter whether it's a wrongful arrest of you or whether it's a resisting a treasonous, certainly a treasonous form of government that signs sovereignty over to a foreign or international corporation. So the people that are signing these authorities over to these international bodies for, say, the carbon tax are simply committing a misprision of felony. They're perjurous in their dealings and certainly seditious and treasonous by collaboration. In other words, they are confused on their right to negotiate away something they don't hold in the first instance, because the little dots are the sovereigns, and they can't give away that because this would impugn their children from making a free choice that are not even born yet. The creatures, you know, the treatment of people as creatures by the IRS and so forth is there, but I assure you that these are the things that just revolts are made of, and it doesn't matter what I say or anyone else. The clusters interdiction table that you have in your email is color-coded, and it has some basic categories. To understand what the man is dealing with on explaining dots, it's explained in the interoperable clusters, meaning academic colonialism, legislative offenses, the corporate state, austerity programming, and capstone doctrine. Now, there's 4 pages of those delineations, and it shows very specifically, well organized, how it works. And at the bottom of the very end, it shows the corporate entities as municipalities of the greater and greater corporation called the United Nations. In fact, the United Nations is a religious corporation, in fact, and that is proven by its Temple of Understanding and the foundation of the Lucius Trust. The people at the little dots have lives. They are people, and they have lives, and they've been very, very particularly busy with sumptuary class rationales. And to stay enfranchised in that sumptuary class, they had to constantly get rid of their values, their judgments. Don't be judgmental. Don't have preeminent moral leadership. And these were all demonized, and certainly the Cloward-Piven strategy was to go in and collapse the entire country to meet the higher cause.
Well, let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you for just a second, because I, over the last 25 years, I've certainly been demonized a lot over the various things, and I have made statements here that nobody's ever tried to prove me wrong. I have told people that you've got, here in America, you've got about as much chance of being killed by a terrorist as you do getting eaten by a great white shark in Phoenix, Arizona. And
the important part to understand about that is that when our audit system goes into deep analysis of structured conflicts, controlled oppositions, and it gives checks list. And the way to understand these is to be very specific and deal with the matters at hand and what is the proof of that. Stay away from philosophy, ideology, and all that. Get the facts first. That way you can regard the difference. The bandwagon effect and is a very useful thing, of course, to defray and marginalize people that bring on contrary evidentiary opinions, such as you. You have to do something to them. Well, you can start with the invented conspiracy theory, and we have a whole chapter on that. Who invented conspiracy theory? Why did they do it? And what is its role in the Cloward-Piven strategy, which was really surged forward in 1966? Interesting to the civil rights, collated movements, agent-based movements. So when we're dealing with who is the terrorist, you have to be definitive. First of all, you're saying there's a good guy and a bad guy. And the good guy is going to be the patriot, but there's a problem. The Patriot Act does not identify the good guy, the patriot. And there's a reason for that. If you go to patriot and you go in and you study the word, that means you're going to have an allegiance to the sovereign. And the people that are inventing the behavior conformity model, which is the Patriot Act series, in other words, you're guilty of this and you're guilty of that, and we're going to move terrorism, enhanced sentencing, all the way back. We're going to take it all the way from terrorism in terms of criminality. We're going to move it all the way back to a dangerous attitude, which could be merely a difference. So all of these structured conflicts and controlled oppositions are manufactured. and they're manufactured, whether it be the 1800s in the so-called Indian Wars here, or if they're in the Middle East or anywhere else. And all of the aggressive nations use them all the time. They use it to quell sectarian tensions inside when they're afraid that the econometrics model is going to be disturbed, such as the stock market. You have a wide cast in a net that's really become omnibus. In other words, anyone who dissents or is different can be labeled a potential terrorist. And these are part of the potentiality ADL prosecution model. And what happens when you're labeling people and doing these sorts of things, you have to abandon, one, preeminent moral leadership in the judiciary, and you have to go to abandoning and abrogating the elements of criminality, which is if there is no act, there is no crime. So what the ADL system is really showing us in potentiality prosecution, it's really about persecution by status. So you're going to get a new status. We're going to have ISIS this year. Then when ISIS is gone, we'll have another one. And I eventually see they're going to have to manufacture a new conflict when the Middle East is pretty well, when the distribution agreements are pretty well realized on all their assets. I would say that the next major conflict will be in South America on the next structured conflict, and it's already being prepped.
I would.
In other words, if you
I would disagree. I would disagree with that. I think, judging from the first Homeland Security meeting, that the next major conflict is going to be right here in America. They've already said it's going to be on our soil, and they've already said they got the term homegrown terrorist. Homegrown terrorist. Anybody that's standing up for Christianity, anybody that's talking about the pharmaceuticals, anybody that's talking about the banks are the new terrorists. And Colonel John Brinkerhoff.
Well, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people certainly following the Cloward-Piven strategy, and a lot of people in the controlled oppositions want the country to fall. You've got left-wing, right-wing globalists that want the free market theology. You have integrated enterprise international. You have political ideologies that say let's depopulate the world and we have to do it to save the planet. You have all kinds of people spinning and whirling through their derangements. But you have to look at it in real time, follow the bouncing ball in terms of proof of fact, what's going on in this country. And there's always going to be a situation where there's going to be so many people upset because you're watching the monetary system shift to another system. And a lot of people are gaining and losing money. There's a lot of people getting very rich off conflict in this country right now. In other words, the sectarian tensions in this country, crime does pay. It pays in divorce lawyers. It pays in criminal systems. You're seeing an absolute surge in the business, the enterprise of detainment, resocialization, and treatment. And the correctional system is turning into that. In other words, you'll have a barbed-wired facility to contain teenagers. It'll be called a youth campus. So a lot of things have already happened, but it is a constant attrition, and that is changing. What the end game is to change the form of government. You may have the people that are screaming Second Amendment rights, First Amendment, all these different sectarian factions are involved in this. But the reality is that they're going to come to a synthesis, and the chosen synthesis is collaborative governance, which means you don't have the legislative body interfering with your decision makers who are going to claim to be sound science initiators. That's where it's going. That's what's happening. So it isn't going to happen. It is happening. Yeah, go ahead, Art.
Yeah, let me say this. Listening to the news this morning, I was coming down here, and we look at the design of this country, this USA, how money is easily come by for corrections and corporate interests. But when it comes to schools or people institutions, money is hard to come by. And the public has to find the money, resources to pay for improvements, upgrades for education, homeless and hungry. The description we always get from this artificial populace is repetitious. And the original population description of how to resolve this is obsolete. As originals, we can truly describe a natural order our First Nations can be by our true nature of our way of life design. But first we must slow down and deal with the concerns at hand. And that's the control factor of this country's hold on the real human being, the real flesh and blood of the man and the woman. When the issues of First Nations are resolved, then the evolution of the real man and woman can be witnessed. Because with our return to the earth design as people, what and how we make decisions will show itself through the family practices and the return of family, friends, and community relationship with the natural world, with the land, the animal, air, and water. The artificial design of the current way of life we all understand today has no real flesh and blood description and never will. So as we continue to dig deeper into what is a solution, we will eventually get to how come the First Nations can't show the true evolutionary process. Well, it's because of the control and the not wanting to see the First Nations set free by the original design of the conquerors. But it is inevitable.
So well said, Art. So true. The fact of the matter is that the papal bulls has never been discharged and never sunsetted, never held null and void, except by Art, and I feigned that. And the problems you see are obviously that ominous dominante, the capstone doctrine, control for the sake of control. In other words, the flat blue tarp idea is a construct. It's the artificial thing that Art spoke to. And what happens is they crowd everybody into that, and then they cause tensions, and they cause dissent, and they cause problems. And these people that are doing this are following particular models and have said it, we're going to change the government. And what they're missing is by not setting the indigenous people to come out from under their cruelties and their violence to them, they're really saying we're not going to relinquish the papal bull. And the people on this planet will never be together and never make that continuity until the papal bull, which is a very, very sinister precept, is done away with. So if you want to stop the fighting in this country, let it go. If you don't want to be a casualty in war, don't fight the war. And we know what we've got in our minds and our hearts about what we can do in the continuity of interest and everything that Art has talked about. And the reality is this: while the facade of respect is shown to the IRA tribal councils and everyone is selling their spirituality in different motifs and getting a paycheck for it, really the respect is not there. The respect is not there either direction. And that is a significant conflict. And Art said it.
William, we've got a caller on. David? You've been on hold for a while. Welcome to the Free American. You with me, David? 985.
Yes.
Yes, sir. 985.
I'm still here.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
985.
Well, I might make my talk a little brief. Like I said, I might make it a little brief because I woke up with a sore throat this morning, but I won't let that stop me. Oh, God, listening to the show today, it set a fire under my ass, and I've had to smoke a peace pipe to sustain myself. I feel better now, but anyway, William, I would much rather listen to what you had to say for the rest of the show. Art too, if he'd like to jump in, because I just don't have the wind in me to talk right now. And like I said, I was enjoying listening to you guys so much.
Thank you. What would you
William?
like? Benny?
Yeah, well, let me just do a quick recap here and kind of put some highlights on some of our laws. Originally, when the white men came to this country, they were spiritual people. They drafted their declaration, created the Constitution, and this became supreme law of the land. But in 1862, when the South walked out, it created a civil war, and the North incorporated in England as a corporation, creating Washington, D.C. Well, then our system changed to UTC law, which is operating under color of law. And under this system, it says don't ask for your constitutional rights in a commercial court. The judge cannot grant it. Only a constitutional court can grant constitutional rights. I had a case here just recently that went to the Nevada Supreme Court, 3 different levels, 3-judge panel, 5-judge, and a 7-judge panel. Eventually, we took this case to the U.S. Supreme Court, which was denied. They denied to hear it, even though those were violations. It cost us over $80,000 to take this case to that level. It broke us. So we don't have equal rights in the court system. When you're summoned to court, your straw man is summoned. It's all capital letters. A straw man has no brain, no heart, and no soul. So you hire an attorney to operate as your straw man, and he does so. And this is supported in 2007 by the Senate hearings on the tribal courts. The findings were the tribal court system was jamming up the appeals court system. And the 5 judges, Indian judges that testified, stated that we need more money and we can fix the system. It's very similar to like painting your car and hoping the hell it runs better. It doesn't. Now, what I want to address is the 2-dot system that was referred to a few minutes ago, and I totally disagree with that 2-dot system. They have a 3-dot system that controls the 2-dot, and that's green power. We look above us, the pendulum, the center of the pendulum swings back and forth. It controls this commercial system. And whether or not who we vote, Republican or Democrat, it's a commercial activity. Also, what I have studied is color testing as Luchers. An example, brown is earth colors. You're in balance with the earth. Red is you're feisty. You got white over black, like a police car. White represents truth, fairness, honesty. Black represents evil. Now, when you go to court, what color robe does a judge wear? He wears a black robe. That indicates to me that there's evil intent. End of my recap. Back to you, William.
That's well said, Benny. Very, very important because UCC law, we've addressed that, and Benny has certainly investigated this, and we have it in the ID brief as well as the larger file. exhibits and demonstrations. The important thing in Indian country is that the bar system has brought in the UCC. The Lakota, various Lakota tribes have adopted UCC, and certainly when you walk into their courtroom, you're going to see a person informalized to a degree, but sitting there with a martial law flag in the corner. UCC law is not natural law, and we've had time and again many people come forward in our deep field audits and say, we're chiefs, we're headmen, and we go by natural law. UCC is not natural law. It is exactly what Benny said, commercial law, and certainly he's described it. In addition to the black robes in the courtroom, there is black robes, and these are fraternal costumes, and they go back into various societies and fraternities, such as when you go through a university, you will see the degrees of doctorate level things delineated, and they'll be wearing a black cape, sometimes with a gold on it, sometimes with a dark purple or red. And these are the enfranchisements under the commercial apparatus. Although it's fraternal, meaning everything's commingled, and these are meant to say something to you. Certainly, when we look at colors, we know that these are frequencies, and we know that what Benny is saying is clearly true, and these colors that relate to the earth are there. So these are valid symbols that go to symbology, go to fraternity, and go to religious precepts, to the occult and cult. Dave, did you want us to address anything in particular?
Well, I just remembered. I heard you fellas mentioning about the Lakota people. Well, I just got finished watching a television series on the home box office channel called Deadwood. Well, first, the series goes into persecuting the Lakota people so they may build the illegal mining town of Deadwood. Well, this television show has about 3 seasons, about a year apart from each other. From 1876, it picks up maybe 2 weeks after General Custer's last stand ends in 1879. Well, by the end of the series, the different commissions and different entities of the federal government stationed all around the area start moving in on Deadwood. And they make the statement, well, they're done stealing from the Indians. I guess we're the only ones left. So when it really does come down to, well, yes, it has a lot to do with race and color, but yet again, it doesn't. I mean, that's just as simple as I could put it.
The money certainly drives a demonstration all over the planet is the permanent installation of citadels. A citadel can be a prison, such as on reservations. A citadel can be military bases. A citadel, there's another kind of citadel evolving on the planet, and that is the international facilities. And essentially, say in Afghanistan, really what they're focused on, the poppy growth and all that is a nice derivative thing that comes out and profits the beneficiaries. But more importantly is that lithium is, Afghanistan supplies over 50% of the lithium on the planet. And all over the planet, as they corporatize the entire planet and make it more hardwired are international facilities that address water and soil. And in this country, they're actually mining Lakota country's soil, as well as in the Northwest states, and that is being loaded on the transportation devices and taken to other countries. The same as water, such as in Leslie and what's going to happen with the Columbia River system. So the commercial always is underlying that, and in any courtroom you certainly have a lawyer with a checkbook, and you have somebody that's going to pay. And insurance companies have a third of the role in a courtroom, and they don't talk a lot about it, but they have representation, and they mediate, arbitrate, negotiate settlements, secret settlements, always according to the valuation. Will you accept this amount of money? So as Benny said, this pendulum swings back and forth, but it always comes into the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing to decide for a commercial court, and that is the money. Now, unfortunately, in settlements, and we've seen this in the Black Hills settlement and various others, austerity is applied, the people are starved down, then you offer them a nickel on a dollar. And then after you get their assets, as they're now, they were creditors, they give you their assets, they sell them to you, and then after they make that transaction, it's an easy one to do. They flip the currency. Now that's happening on the global scale right now. We have the dollar going down. People are going to sell while the dollar really has very little value. And after the currency flips, then that unit of measurement will make the speculators and the banksters very happy, and their beneficiaries. So,
William, go ahead. I have one more thing to say. This is the way I feel about money, and any indigenous person, whether they be international or in our own soil, will totally agree that, for instance, I heard a story that scientists did an experiment on gorillas, about 100 of them in a contained area, somewhere in their native habitat, and they introduced them to currency. So the scientists played shopkeepers. They made sure they had everything the gorillas needed. And, instead of having banana trees strewed out all over the area, you'd have to go to the scientists with your money. I mean, these are primates that have never known anything about money or the monetary system whatsoever, and it turns out there was gorillas who knocked out unconscious, some of them even dead, with their money stolen from them, and the scientists trying to take money from the gorillas even got attacked themselves. Well, here we go again. These are primates that were perfectly fine on their own, with in the jungle, doing whatever their instinctual senses tell them to do, and then the scientists move in on them and corrupt their little society right there, and in a big way. That is what I see with us as a whole, and now they're doing it to the indigenous people again, time and time again, just like they've been doing to anybody who doesn't have who they consider at the bottom of the barrel, and what I could think of a million words to describe us, but I don't have to go any further than that.
Excellent view. And in this and their techno jargon and all that, you start looking into the aristocratic class. It deals with the barristers, the lawyers, and that became known as the Illuminati. And one of the things that was principal in that was to constrict the sumptuary laws, which were basically the consumer laws, and so they would allow the consumers, the underclass, they would fix them exactly like you said.
All right,
Even though
we're
they
out
thought
of
they were
time,
civilized.
guys. We're out of time. Thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow. And William, Art, thank you very much. It was certainly an interesting show.
Thank you, Benny.
I got a moral
Okay,
for
bye.
this. I've got a moral for this. It's what I'm going to work on. Figure out how we can work together for our own benefit.
Thank you much.
God bless you.